And for more on what's going on in Washington, we are now joined by Maura Gillespie, founder of strategic communications firm BlueStack Strategies. Maura has also served as a deputy chief of staff to former Representative Adam Kinzinger and an advisor to former House Speaker John Boehner. Maura, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Really appreciate your expertise and your voice.
Happy to be here.
All right, well, I want to take some of your experience with House speakers and just bring it into what we saw today with Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, former interim speaker. People might remember him from his gavel saying he is not going to run for re-election. Close ally to former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, hasn't announced whether he's going to run. What does it say about the future of the party if both of these people don't run?
You know, I read McHenry's resignation, kind of announcement. I appreciate his optimism in that the House is in good hands, but quite frankly, I believe the institution is at risk with members like him leaving. It's a great loss to the House, to the party that I belong to, but also to the institution, because his role and his years of experience as a member, part of leadership, it is important when you have someone like Mike Johnson, who is very new to this position and could really utilize and benefit from having Patrick McHenry around a little longer. So it's important. The role of the speaker is not just to be speaker of the party that they belong to, it's speaker of the whole House. And that's a big responsibility. So it's a shame. We'll see what happens to Kevin McCarthy. We'll see what kind of role he wants to play.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that a little bit. What do you think he could do? I mean, he's such a huge fundraiser, McCarthy. It seems like all reports are that he's still very upset about having been ousted. What kind of future could you see for someone like that?
I think he can make some trouble if he wants to for some of those members who ousted him. Again, he is a prolific fundraiser. His war chest is pretty substantial. And, Mike Johnson is currently struggling to even come close to what Kevin McCarthy could do. I know that, some members of the McCarthy team have reached out and been offering to help Speaker Johnson, but that's not a widely agreed upon strategy. So there are still some pretty hurt feelings, some bruised egos there, and that's going to impact both the NRCC, the fundraising effort for House members, but also Speaker McCarthy's ability to really coalesce and members, but also to recruit new members to build that majority.
Yeah, it's important work, especially since that House has been in such disarray, especially the Republican delegation when it comes to these funding bills and so much else, which is wound up in the ouster of one speaker. We'll have to see what happens in the early parts of next year when we get to this bifurcated funding bill, the stopgap bill that passed. Liz Cheney is a person that a lot of people are talking about right now. She's touring with this book about the dangers that Trump could present to America in a second term and the dangers that he has presented. You worked with Adam Kinzinger at the same time that he was on the January 6th committee as Liz Cheney. Perhaps you have some insight on this, because a lot of people are talking about Liz Cheney possibly mounting this third-party bid to stop Trump in 2024. What do you think the likelihood is of Cheney running?
I've always thought that she was looking towards 2028, so I'm not entirely sure that she would do it. I also don't see the benefits of running this late in the game for her, but I understand the urgency of what she is talking about and the dangers at play here when it comes to someone like Donald Trump, who does not seem to understand how our Constitution works, let alone want to abide by those rules and the guidelines that are set up in our Constitution and our framework. So I understand where she's coming from as far as wanting to leave that on the table, but I just don't see in practicality how that would really play out. I don't think it would also bring anyone from the Trump world or the MAGA world to her side, as they seem to pretty much hate her, to put it kindly. I mean, put it bluntly, she is not beloved by anyone in the Trump world, so it's not really like she's going to be able to pull them away from him. So I don't see it happening this time around.
Yeah, she's really fashioned herself as a bit of a nemesis. I mean, as we're talking about this election, let's talk about this debate that's coming up. We know there's going to be 4 people on that stage, not former President Trump. What are you looking for when you see DeSantis, Christie, Ramaswamy, and Haley square off? What do you think the stakes are?
They have to call out Donald Trump for not being on that stage for a 4th time, because to the voters, they need to, one, explain why it is that they are running, what separates them from Donald Trump, but also point out how important these debates are for the voters. These debates are for voters to understand where each candidate stands on certain policy issues that they care about, or things that are happening in their family lives when it comes to the economy, safety and security, but also point out the fact that Donald Trump is actively working against the party by having his own conversations with, a Sean Hannity tonight and doing his own events to more or less take attention away from these debates. He's actually working against them. And the whole MAGA mentality is supposed to be, someone who is an entitled member of the party saying they don't need the people. Well, Donald Trump is acting as if he does not need the people, and he does. He needs their vote, and he should want to earn it. And by not participating in these debates, he's not trying to earn it. So the goal for these, 4 candidates on the stage is to really set themselves apart. But so far, they haven't really called out the biggest elephant, which is pun intended, given GOP. But they haven't called him out, and they really need to do so.
Yeah, we've seen that strategy kind of play out a little bit more recently from DeSantis on that debate stage, but to your point, no one's really taken it aggressively to Trump. We'll have to see if we see that. And you say Trump not being on the debate stage, whatever the implications of it are, he is the person in pole position clearly, just 40 days until the Iowa caucus. Do you think that any of these 4 candidates we're talking about in our last minute here really has a shot, or is it just Trump as a nominee?
So Nikki Haley has done really well during each of these debates, and she has separated herself from the pack, I would say, as far as fundraising goes with poll numbers. So I'd say that this is a big night for her, to really shine and to try and get even more detractions from the Trump world. But it's hard, with you, essentially an incumbent, to really outshine him and to match where he is in the polls. But again, she can make some real headway. We know that Iowa in years past hasn't necessarily, whoever wins Iowa doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win the nomination. We've seen it 3 years, in a row where that didn't pan out. So there's a lot to be said about New Hampshire, South Carolina. So we really do need to look at those states before we go ahead and pack it up and give it up to Donald Trump. So I think there's an opportunity for her.
And politics always has a capacity to surprise us. You just think back to 2016 when it happened, but we'll have to see how this one plays out. Maura Gillespie, thanks so much for bringing your expertise to the show tonight. Really appreciate having you here.
Thanks for having me.